right, cool. So we will jump right in.
That's the start.
Cameras,
right
you're good. You good, Cams? We all on?
Good. All cameras on.
Awesome. All
right, let's cut that. That's enough.
Man, that's so loud. As always, can we just have a slow fade in for once? That's what we need.
All right. You can do whatever you want.
All right. Well, hey, Prolific Podcast. Go ahead. No, hey, go ahead.
We're the official Step Brothers.
We're
the original.
These two amazing spiritual anointed yet clowns.
I have this recording right now.
Worked for me. Worked for me.
Oh, wow.
Worked for me.
So that explains
and you
it all.
made us more clowns.
Amen.
I think we all suffered because of that.
We all have PTSD.
I mean, I will say I will never be different. You know, I will forever be different. I will forever be different because of the last few days.
Yeah.
Hopefully positive.
Well,
yeah, dude.
Memorable for sure.
So talk to us about our previous boss. Tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, I want to hear him from this standpoint.
I mean,
here,
this guy, he took me out to play some golf today.
Okay.
First time I've ever played 18 holes. It was fun.
You did great. I thought it was hilarious because I told you we were going to play golf.
Yeah.
And then I asked you what I thought was an obvious question. Do you have a polo and golf shorts? And your eyes went like rolled back in your head like, yeah, I got it. And then like 10 seconds later, nah, I don't have a polo.
Yeah.
Can we talk about how much pressure the dressing for golf is?
Oh yeah, it's serious now.
Why?
Like, it's like,
Is it?
I don't understand.
What's interesting now is you don't have to wear a polo shirt now. So now it's like cool to like have the collar that like pops out.
Okay.
So
Is
it's
this a thing?
Yeah, it's
Wait,
very.
I thought it was a joke.
No, you have to wear a collar shirt.
So what happens if you don't? Do you get like...
It's like dress code. So they'll be like, hey, you can't go out.
Wow.
You have to have your own clubs.
Really?
So today we golfed and at our Warrior Conference today, and you may not know this, but I had to rent clubs. You couldn't borrow from J. Mike.
Right.
You have to.
Can you imagine having the job of the guy that's like checking if you're using your buddy's gloves?
Yeah. I can't wait till they say you have to use the club a certain amount of times on a round. That's probably happening soon. That's not happening.
Really?
Now, BJ, do you mind if you get it a little bit closer to
Yes,
you?
yes.
I need your mic like 2
Your
inches.
Steve Furtick.
Yeah, no Furticking, please. No, thank you.
But let's just be honest. You, for not being a golfer,
Okay.
you were incredible today.
Hey.
Like usually guys spread it left and right. You were down the middle quite a bit. And you looked good doing it. I'll just be honest with you.
Hey,
You looked good.
Thank you.
Yeah, you looked good.
Received the compliment.
But
I received.
That's what got us to accept the job. Whenever we're being hired.
But didn't you want to compliment my 137
Oh yeah,
yards?
this guy, dude. The childlike joy that Joey
yeah.
showed.
Oh, yeah.
Because I mean, he hit an incredible shot, and I was like, he hits it, and it went in, and we were just like, did that go
Did
in?
the
And
ball
then,
go
did you
in?
I know.
What'd you do?
Eagle.
It was 137 yards out.
Wow.
I took my 8-iron, chipped it, and it bounced.
You didn't have to put it?
It bounced,
No, it was 100
and then
yards.
it looked like it bounced in. And I'm like, I think it went in. Well, the guy we were playing with, he thought it went in too, but he saw my excitement, so he's like, I don't want to get too excited because it may have rolled off the backside of the green.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I got a little bit nervous, and we walked up there. You pulled the
Yeah,
Instagram.
I had to capture
Yeah.
for the gram.
Because if it's not on the gram, it didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
And it's on the gram.
It's on the gram. It's on the gram.
Yo, that's a real friend right there.
That was awesome.
This is going to be a good moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great.
He was
Awesome, man.
hyping me up, so I had to hype him up.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
You know,
He's
come
great.
on,
He's taking a bunch of buddies out to golf to see who sticks.
Oh yeah,
Who-
he
yeah.
sticks. It's his golf. It's his sport. Golf is going to
Oh,
be your sport.
I'm buying clubs. I was already talking to my wife about it. I was like, I'm needing to make a pivot on my request for Christmas.
So his
I need to change my career.
his wife's family owns a golf course in Iowa.
Yeah, they own a golf course.
And you've never did a whole 18?
That's crazy.
Well, in my defense, it's a 9-hole golf course.
Okay, so you've done
okay.
an... Okay, all right.
I think all golf courses should be 9-hole golf
Right,
courses.
but I don't know, man. At 9, I was like, I didn't want it to be over.
Really?
We're not done with night. So first, can I share this? Sure. So he gets here and he's like, "We playing golf?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, Are we doing 9 or like the full thing? He called 18 holes the full thing.
Hey, you only know what you know.
Amen. By the way, if PJ ever says, "Can I share this?" What he's saying really is, "I'm going to share this."
I'm going to sell this to everyone right now.
But honestly, I was impressed. You did well.
That's awesome, man.
You did well. You'll dream about golf.
And my guy J Mike was coaching me up. He told me like literally what club to use. Like I was like, playing a video game. I was like, in regard to like how hard I should hit this, like what the percentage would be.
Yeah. You were also using non-golf terms and like basketball terms.
Yeah, I was shooting.
I boxed them out.
Yeah.
I was like shooting buckets.
Screen.
At one point he goes, "Man, I put it close to the bucket." And I was like,
I mean, that kind of fits,
bucket?
though.
And he goes, "Oh, I'm using golf term. I mean basketball terms." You are.
I think it fits.
Yeah, it does.
Yep.
That's awesome.
You're a hooper, man.
I did play college basketball.
Yeah, dude.
Loved it.
Yeah, dude. It's in my DNA.
It is.
Come on.
It's the greatest.
All the hoopers. We need to get all you hoopers.
Yeah, well,
tomorrow morning.
They
at
have a
some point.
cheat code. They have a cheat code. They have about 18 inches on me, so it's not fair. Yeah.
Well, we will. By the way, we will be playing 3-on-3 basketball. You can't because you got to fly out. 3-on-3 basketball tournament is tomorrow afternoon.
Oh man,
I'm gonna go home and get my shoes.
Maybe we could open up the gym tonight.
I think you
Only if this can this happen. If we do it, then I'll just feed. I'll just feed it. Trust me, I won't even shoot once. I'll just feed it the whole time.
There you go. Awesome, guys. Well, listen. So some of you guys watching today actually don't know Pastor Joey and Joshua here with us. So would you guys introduce yourselves just for a moment? Just tell us. Of course, PJ. We know you, but a lot of people might not know you. So
I had the privilege of being the lead pastor of Wellspring Community Church in Ruskin. That's a church right here in the Tampa Bay area. And we started the church about 8 years ago. And God's just doing some incredible things. And we really pride ourselves on saying we want to be real people. We want to reach real people, the real hope of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so we do this Warrior Conference every year. And this is our 3rd annual Warrior Conference. It's a men's conference where we gather the men of our church together and talk all things men and all that good stuff. And about 3 or 4 months ago, I was on an Instagram of another pastor, and the man to my left was being interviewed by Pastor Ed Young. Yeah. And I saw the interview, and April and I were watching it, my wife April, and I said, man, how cool would it be to get Joshua Broom at our next Warrior Conference?
And here I am.
Yeah.
Look at that.
And then the next day he messaged, and then he's here. But I think what's fascinating is really his story and how he got here and all of that. So
yeah, we're really looking forward to hearing about it. So introduce yourself, because so Joshua, I didn't know, before you had talked to me about Joshua, I had never heard, so I know some people haven't either. So
I mean, my name's Joshua Broom. I live in Dallas, Texas. Been married to my wife Hope for 7 years. We've got 3 kids, one on the way.
Come on.
And we operate
and you make only? Yeah. You make only what?
Boys.
Only boys.
Kingmaker.
Dude,
the kingmaker.
Real talk. My mother-in-law was like, hey, you just don't have it in you, dude. I was like, that's right.
but a little part of you was like,
oh no, I would have absolutely. I mean, hey, I'll keep shooting my shot.
Let's be honest. Live on the air, which one of those 4 kids would you trade in for a girl?
No. 0.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but we operate a nonprofit called Finding Hope, and we live in Dallas, Texas. And I do itinerant speaking. I write books, and God has been really kind to allow me to have this story that points to Him. And
I think what's significant about why I asked him is, and I know you're going to lead through this conversation, but what's unique is Joshua was in the porn industry for 6 years. He did over 1,100 pornographic movies, 3 or 4 a week, 25 to 30 a month.
Yeah.
And at one point, he was the #1 porn star in the entire nation. And pornography is a strong addiction in our world. And I said, you know what, we need to get him here. It's one thing for a pastor to get up and say addiction is blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But when somebody who's lived it and has the t-shirt to prove they were in it, I said, man, our men need to know about that. And I think every man does. Every man listening to this podcast needs to know.
Yeah, I think what's been incredibly kind, to Joey's point, I was in the industry from 2006 to 2013. And so had a lot. That
seems like a really short time to have done 1,100.
Yeah, well, I mean, when it's literally your
like
career
24/7.
I mean, if you're thinking about how much content's on the internet, it's like they're shooting multiple a day, because tons of studios, tons. I mean, so it sounds
it's a whole different.
It sounds like a lot, but I mean they're producing it in such mass quantity that it's not a lot. I could have done more if I would have stayed in it longer, but. Yeah, I mean, I think that God has really redeemed and repurposed my influence, my story. Come on. What I get to do is kind of pull back the veil and display how dark it is in the fantasy that people believe it is. And at the same time, I've been out for 11 years, and I've had the privilege to sit under and learn from a lot of people doing great work in the space. So I've got a ton of experience walking people through, the neurological damage, the practical damage, like walking people through. Here is why it's so damaging to the consumer, and I can share it from a unique perspective.
Yeah, it's like you were sort of quote unquote the drug dealer,
sure,
right? And you understand it at a deeper level. And one thing that made me really excited to talk to you today, Joshua, was that there is a dehumanization of the people on the screen for people to be able to fantasize and have pleasure from watching pornography, right? Like you forget that there are people.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're supposed to use things and love people, and pornography makes you use people and love things.
Wow, right. Come on.
Yeah.
Wow. So what was the defining, like? So you mentioned you stepped into it in 2006. If you don't mind me asking, what was like the thing that brought you to it? Was it something that just the draw of your flesh, or was there something that led you down that path that just you kind of ended up there?
Yeah, I mean, it was complete happenstance, the fact that I ended up in it. But long story short, I was a theater guy. I started modeling and acting when I was 13. Had a decent amount of success. Like many people, I thought I would be more successful if I put myself in closer proximity to the industry. So I moved to Hollywood. Got an agent and was working for a little bit over a year. And I was at a restaurant and someone sat down, 3 girls sat down and were like, hey, do you want to be an actor? And I was like, yes, great. Wow. This is going to be an opportunity to work on a project, or they're going to introduce me to someone. Because more often than not, that's how you get your break. It's like, there's someone that introduced you to someone, or there was someone that was already doing something and invited you into that.
Yeah.
But they were talking about porn, and I was exposed to porn when I was 13, and I lived a very promiscuous life. So what you were exposed to impacts the decisions that you make in a very real way. So when someone said, hey, were you interested in, hooking up with girls on camera for money? Honestly, it wasn't something that I ever pursued, but I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal. Like outside of a camera being there and a check being there, it was stuff that I was already doing anyway. And I honestly didn't think, okay, I'm going to do it, and then I'll get a check, and then what? Like,
yeah, like it wasn't even, well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Did you ever have any encounter with the Lord prior? Like any encounter prior, or were you?
Well, so I grew up. So my mom was 16 when she had me, and we grew up in my grandmother's home. So my grandmother, grandfather, she had a sister and 2 brothers, and we all lived there as I was growing up. And we went to church every Sunday. Wow. So like growing, but this was until I was 7. My mom got married when I was 7, and that lasted a very short period. He was a very terrible person, and after that, we never moved back in with her, and we were just kind of riding solo. And I never got plugged back into church after that. So outside of the first 7 years of my life, I wasn't in.
So God was something that you've known about. It wasn't any type of relationship, anything.
And to be honest, I probably would have said I was a Christian because at that time, what I thought, what was contingent of someone that was a Christian, it was, hey, I believe that God is real and He created everything, and that was it.
Right.
And
you know, James talks about, right?
You knew, but it was like,
well, I mean, and I think that the foundation that I did have, those seeds did impact my life later in life.
Right. Yeah.
But as far as like any kind of consciousness of the gospel or Jesus,
or sin, or all that.
I think what's interesting, if I can interject, because I know a little bit more than Alejo and Joey about your story. I think what's fascinating is how the lack of your dad played into the not just the porn industry, but sexual identity and drawn to the opposite sex, the affirmation that you were looking for. Speak to that, because I think that's really important.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially at this conference too.
There's a lot of people listening to your podcast right now that don't have a dad. They're looking to to make their father happy.
Yeah, certainly. I would be very
validation.
Yeah, I would be very remiss not to mention that aspect of my story, because I probably talk about fatherlessness just as much as I talk about pornography.
Yeah, come on.
But what was unique about my upbringing was that my mom had me when she was 16, and I was living with my grandparents. But I lived in a town small enough where my dad, lived in that same city, and I would see him, at the grocery store, at the gas station. I would see him in town, and as I got older, it went from something that was confusing to something that was frustrating because me and my mom, we were doing the best we could with what we had, but at the same time, not having him and him being right there was really tough, and it made me feel inadequate, and it made me feel like, absolutely. So like most men, you have this high achiever personality, and I falsely believed that I needed to prove myself, and I needed to earn the affirmation of others through achievement. So I thought, okay, I've got to be the best. And that was, initially it was scholastics, it was sports, and then it was modeling and acting, and then it was girls, and it was thing after thing. It was conquest after conquest, dopamine hit after dopamine hit. Because the most dangerous thing about believing a lie is that if you believe a lie to be true, it's true to you, and you create a worldview in which you see through that lie. 100%. Yeah, and it's like, even if you're 5 degrees off, man, if there's a path for your life and a purpose for your life, if you're 5 degrees off and you're going from New York to California, you're going to end up in Mexico.
Yeah.
And what that looks like on a practical basis is that place that you end up, that 5 degrees off is death.
So correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm hearing you saying, thank you for asking that question, PJ, because that's a big part of the reason why we do this is because we want the family to be strong again. Yeah. The family, I think, is where, like, if we could restore that original Genesis family, I think that so many of the things that we encounter or that we see in the world wouldn't exist there. So what I'm hearing you say, I think, is that fatherlessness really pushed you to be achievement oriented. Yeah. And to the point where you had no idea of good and evil. Like those things didn't matter as much. It was just more so go and achieve, go and do, go and prove.
And I would say like I didn't know what it meant to be a man. So because I didn't know what it meant to be a man, I didn't know what it meant to be me. And, Romans 12:2 talks about them either being conformed by the world or you're being transformed by the renewing of your mind. And what was happening was I was learning to be a man through the lens of my experience. I was learning how to be a man through the lens of television, like pornography. I never had a person in my life speaking truth. And if there's no one in your life speaking truth, all that's left is lies.
So that's why you've become who you've become.
Yeah.
But I think before you move past that moment, there had to have been days where you're playing soccer, you're playing sports, and you want to look in the crowd and see your dad. And as you look into the stands, you're like, Billy's got his dad, and Johnny's got his dad, and I don't have my dad. No, then you get into theater, and he's not there to look at your performances. And so when these 3 girls walk into the bar and say, I see you, I notice you, I want to validate you.
Yes.
It's that dopamine hit of, that's my dad.
Oh, dude, I remember, I played quarterback, and I remember, like, I'm throwing passes to shrubs.
Yeah.
I'm out there playing. Me and Kobe are playing one-on-one, but he's, he's
Always
imaginary.
winning, right?
You know,
Always winning.
Yeah, and if I miss a shot, he fouled me.
Amen.
But yeah, I mean that was a real thing. Like not having him there at significant moments in my life did impact me for sure. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Joshua?
Sure.
This is a question I wanted to. I think I was going to ask you in the second part of this, but I feel like led to ask you right now. When the women that you were involved with during those episodes and all that content that you created, would you say that they shared that same rejection and fatherlessness as a whole? Like, did you? Because this is what I picture in my mind, right? Like the first thing that comes to my mind with somebody being in the industry, in an industry like that, like for me, the closest thing is, let's say you graduate high school and you go to strip, right?
Yeah.
That's, that was the step that you imagine, like a girl taking a step that is like against their dignity or whatever, right?
You're talking about a strip club?
Yeah, a strip club.
Okay.
Like they go to be a stripper instead of go to college or whatever, right? And the thought that goes through my mind is, are they thinking about their dad?
I would
their
say
parents,
I would say there's definitely some brokenness there, but so 85% of the girls that got in the industry, they had either been sexually abused or they were being extorted before they got into porn.
So can you talk about that a little bit?
So 2006 Craigslist was big, and Craigslist was post an ad, and this ad would say, this is a modeling job, and we pay $800 and you're going to be there for 2 hours. And this girl would show up and they would snap a few photos and then ask her to take, one thing off, and, they would continue going. And then at some point the girl would get uncomfortable and it's like, this is not what I came here for. And their response would be, well, you're not going to get paid unless you continue doing what I'm asking you to do. And you've already signed the release, so I'm going to use the pictures I've already taken anyway. There's nothing you can do about it. So those photos are going to go up on the internet, and your credibility is already going to be.
Yeah.
These are already going to be on the internet. So either your choices are, I'm going to put them up anyway, or you can continue going and get paid. Those are your two choices. And people who put themselves in that situation, more often than not, they're not gonna call the police. They're not gonna lawyer up. They're gonna they're
embarrassed to be there.
Yeah, they feel
right.
They're overwhelmed with shame and guilt. And when you're overwhelmed with shame and guilt, you're probably going to continue to compromise. So they would, or they were being sexually extorted and sexually exploited, and then porn was a better option. Porn was a better option than being sold by their pimp and being beaten and all these things. Like porn was a safer environment than the environment they were coming from.
Wow.
So that's the reality of nearly 90% of the girls that get in the industry.
Wow.
Did you ever have interactions, emotional interactions?
That's actually was going to be my question.
Was any of the women was it any sorry we're doing this, sorry that this is where you're at? Was there ever any of that, or is it just
seemed like
it's
a
just
job.
an act?
Yeah.
No, I mean it wasn't even. I mean it became so monotonous that you would come in, sign paperwork. The girl was taking photos, and the director would just wave you in, and it would happen. And the only thing that you would know about the girl was their fake name, and what you did know about them was their real name. Is that the first thing you would do is that you would sign. You would see their copies of their IDs, and then you would see their standardized, because everyone had to have an up-to-date STD and AIDS test. You had to do that every 21 days. So you would see the test, it would match up with the IDs, and you would sign it. And that was pretty much all that you would know.
Wow.
And then you would walk into a room and then have sex with this girl. But there were times where the girl would be high or something like that, and the director would stop and send the girl home, and then you'd wait, and another girl would come in. Or there would be times where their pimp or boyfriend or husband had brought them there, and you knew that they were there because they wanted to get the check, so that the girl wouldn't get the check,
get the money,
and they were just sitting there not no big deal. So it was messed up for sure, but anything becomes normative once you expose yourself to it over and over
like
again.
the numbness. Like I was gonna ask you like the beginning steps and everything. Like you mentioned about, you know, the veil kind of being in the very beginning of the episode, like kind of the veil being removed. Like you really want to help people see that. So that veil, what was when you first walked in there? You mentioned that it was steps. Did you just suddenly become numb to it, or was it a process?
So the first time I did it, after it was over, I was like, I'm never going to do that again, because I walk into set, I sign paperwork, and then this guy is like, hey, I understand, like, this is your first, hold on, let me fix these. So I walk into set, and this guy's like, I understand this is your first time, so here's a Viagra. If you've never taken this before, bite it in half. We'll need you in like 30 minutes. And I'm sitting there like with this pill in my hand. It's like, what am I doing? And, there's this like, this girl that's sitting on this day bed, and there's like 4 or 5 cameras around her, and like they've got like Kino flows like all around her. So it's like these small like stadium lights all around her. And I'm like, okay, I got picked up in a town car and brought here. So it's like, if I want to leave, it's going to be like, a little kid calling their mom and dad or being like, hey, I changed my mind. I want you to come pick me up. So I was like, okay. And I think this will preach all day long, in that you believe because you've gone so far, you've got to continue to go. And it's like, man, that's the way that the enemy continues to
just hooks and hooks.
Tell us about that, bro.
Yeah, man.
Keep talking. Share that.
Because there's compromise in your life, and it's like, because you've done X, you have to continue doing it, or it's like, you've gone this far, I might as well continue going, or I might as well take another step further. And I just believed, like, okay, because I did this, I've already messed up.
Too far.
So I've gone too far to go back. And that's kind of where I was. So I walk into this like barrage of lights, and you think like, okay, I'm just gonna hook up with this girl. So like, what big of a deal is it? But no, it's like there's like camera A, B, and C, and there's someone shooting BTS, and there's someone holding a boom mic over my shoulder, and there's someone holding a C light like under my junk, and there's like a random like guy eating Doritos in the corner, and it's like, it's so humiliating, and you've exposed yourself to a certain degree, and the director is telling you what to do. Like you're not
in the middle of the filming.
Yeah, so you're not engaging in a sexual act for pleasure. You're performing a performance for a camera. So the camera has to see everything. So you're uncomfortable, and it's hot, and like the director's telling you what to do, and there's like 10, 15 people like looking at you. There's maybe like as many as like 20 people in the room. And for you to be able to do that, you've got to go to another place.
Yeah. You have to disassociate yourself.
So it's not like I'm engaging in an act with a girl. I'm doing something that needs to be done. So like I've got to do this for so long. It's like, you're in each position or whatever for like 5 to 10 minutes. And then it's like, you
literally hit a switch.
Yeah. So, and it's in like, from the consumer aspect, I mean, you got to know, it's like, you see the movie Inception, you see like the fight scene that happens in the elevator. It's like people's like flying around and like time stopping, and like all of a sudden it's like slow-mo. It's like, man, you don't see that and think they just walked into an elevator and that happened. There was choreography, there were actors, there was editing, there was, things that went into it to create something that looked like something. And pornography is the same thing. There's edits. There's 2 people who are being paid to be there that don't really want to be there. There's all this stuff that goes into this finished product that people see, and you think that 2 people just walked into a room and had sex, and it's 2 broken people just got paid to do something they didn't want to do, and they did it anyway. And now that the brokenness that ensued is giving someone pleasure, but that pleasure is counterfeit, because what you're consuming is not what you think.
So let me ask you about that, because you just said that last part, giving somebody pleasure. Like, so you said the first time you were like, I'm never doing this again.
Right.
So what got you to do it the second time? Just that might as well thought?
No. So literally my life blew up. So I did that first film. It went viral. And so the agent, the legitimate agent that was representing me gives me a call. I go into their office, and it's like, hey, in your contract, there's morality calls, and we can't be associated with anyone that's doing pornography. Like we can't be associated with your likeness. That reflects poorly on our organization. So you're fired, essentially. You know, we can't represent you anymore. And then a few days passed, and then my mom calls me, and she's like, you know, I live in a small town, so word traveled fast. So someone told my uncle that told my mom. It's like, and my mom's calling me saying, "Hey, your uncle said that someone at work said that you were in a porn. Is that true?" And I was humiliated. So again, you know,
so the devil is like deep, like so crazy, bro. I just
hooks over and over.
Because what's so crazy. So as somebody that was on the other side of the screen, right?
Yeah.
I never saw you, you know, but as somebody that was already on the other side of the screen, people are experiencing the exact same lie.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you performing it, the devil, you know, I always tell people that the way the devil always presented sin to me is like an open cage, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, it's all right. Like you can just walk in, and then like when you want to walk out, you know, you can just get out, right? But then the moment you walk in, the door gets shut. You know, you're like, wait a minute, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just so crazy how you're experiencing the same thing the watcher, the audience is experiencing when they are continuing to fall back into the addiction of pornography.
Yeah.
Dang it, well, might as well. I watched it today once already. I mean, might as well a second time.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's fantasy behind the screen, and it's fantasy on the other side of the screen. It's both.
Yeah.
You mentioned something earlier. I think it'd be really good for the audience to hear this, and you quickly went past it, but slow down on the you have a fake name. Because when I hear you say that, it reminds me, and we'll share this again tonight, but it reminds me of Daniel's three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. What was the first thing that they did? They changed their name. They said, no longer will you be this. We're going to call you this. And that old person's gone. And what the porn industry is really doing is saying, you're no longer Joshua Broom.
Yeah.
You're now this person.
Yeah.
And so that almost helps them
Oh, sure.
put you in a different light.
Yeah, 100%.
Speak to that.
Yeah. So I sat down with this agent that introduced me into the industry, and he asked me 3 questions. Is like, you know, how'd you grow up? Why are you here? And what do you hope to accomplish? And my answers were, I grew up just pretty much me and my mom. And
what a strange question to ask somebody.
That was
but it's not though. But it's just like, if I'm trying to manipulate you and you tell me you come from a broken home,
that's what I mean.
Yeah. And then my it's like I want to do acting and modeling. And the third thing I said, which is even worse, is I said that I wanted to be famous.
Yeah.
And if you think about, I want to be famous. It's not even a thing. It's not even a thing that's achievable. It's not tangible. Famous is this like westernized ideology thinking that I need likes and a blue check mark and notoriety so that I feel some sort of way. But the reality is I want to be seen. I want to be known.
All the things God can give you.
Well, yeah, but it's not even what God can give you. It's literally your heart desiring the thing that you were made to desire, which is a relationship with God through the person of Jesus Christ. Like you were wired to want that, yet we replace it with a counterfeit.
Right.
We replace the intimacy that God has created us to desire with Him with counterfeits all day. And that's why it's this cyclical problem of me not being satisfied, and I have to go back to the well to get some more water, but there's water to be found in the person of Jesus, man. You know?
Come on. And we just continue to go after, like we would think that, it's probably the same thought you had the very first time, like, well, it's just one time.
Yeah.
I drank from it.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
It's just, I'll never do it again.
Right.
And then you mentioned just at the end, you got thirsty.
Yeah.
Your flesh got thirsty.
Yeah.
And and it's funny, Andy Mineo has a song, and he talks about like, we'll just continue to desire and drink from every other river that we can find until we actually yoke our life up to the river that will never run out.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Joshua? At what point did you feel the Lord begin to move in your heart through this whole process?
Yeah. So I'm about to go on a 5-minute tangent, just so you know.
Yeah.
So,
do it.
You can have 40.
Yeah. So here's what happened. So like Joey was talking about, you know, in the porn industry, you go by a fake name, and just the fact of you surrendering your name. If you want to be famous, you want your name to be famous. Yet the first thing you do is you give away your name. Wow. So that in itself points to shame.
Dude, I'm just telling you right now. I'm going to interrupt him on purpose. I'm just telling you this part of his story. If you're listening right now, this is the most mic drop part of his story. I'm literally interviewing him last night, and I'm starting to tear up and cry because I'm just like, oh my God, this is what every man needs.
Yeah.
Somebody to see him. somebody to notice them, somebody to say, I value you, not for what you can do, but for who you are. And so I want all of your listeners to listen to him tell this part of his story.
Yeah.
It's the most powerful part.
Yeah. So, I'm going by this fake name, and the beauty of accountability is...
For how long?
So 6 years. So 6 years. And the beauty of accountability is, if you say to me, hey, the person that you are, the person that I know you to be, if you're doing things that don't align with the person I know you to be, and I call you out on that, you got two choices. You either say you're right and you make changes in your life, or you push me away. And for me, as I stayed in the industry longer, I pushed my mom away. I pushed my brother away. I pushed my fraternity brothers away. I pushed every single person that wasn't patting me on my back. I pushed them away. And I find myself 6 years in, and I had made all the money. I thought, if I make over $1 million, I'll feel successful enough for the hurting in my heart to go away.
Wow.
It didn't work. I thought if I won a ton of awards and become the most popular person in the industry in 2012, I won Performer of the Year. I'd been nominated for it 3 times, and the 4th time I was nominated for it, I won it. And I thought if everyone in the industry voted that I was the best, then I would feel like I was the best, but it actually didn't work. And it amplified the anxiety, it deepened the depression, and I made a plan to take my life. And I was flying back from Atlanta to LAX, and I made a very detailed plan to take my life. And there was this check that was in my pocket, and it was just like, it was this giant payroll check, and it was just driving me crazy. And then I started thinking, I'm like, man, I better deposit this check, because I don't want the funds that came from what I just did to go to waste. And I hope, like, maybe, my mom will get them or someone will get them. So I go to the bank to deposit the check, and at the same time, I knew the memo on the check, it said something grotesque. They on purpose, they would write that almost like as this malicious act. But for me, I was trying to be masochistic in that I'm going to hand a teller this check. And normally I went to the Dropbox or ATM because I didn't want to say, hey, here's this money for me, prostituting myself. So this time my deal was I'm going to hand her the check, and she's going to look at me and like say something snarky or like make a face or whatever. And I slide the check across the counter, and I'm moments from taking my life. So I'm like sweating, shaking, and just waiting for her to tell me the thing that I knew was true. And then instead she looks at me and says, Joshua, are you okay? Joshua, is there something I can do for you? And what she didn't know, that was the first time I'd heard my name in a year. Wow. And it shattered this numbness and this brokenness, and I felt the weight of robbing my mom of the thing that she wanted most, which it wasn't me to come home or me to do this. She just wanted to know if I was okay. And then I called her, and I thought she was going to chew me out or be mad at me. And she just said, I love you. You're so much better than this. Please come home. And I did. So I left. Instead of taking my life, I ran for my life. But there was about a 2-year period where kind of same mentality. I get into the health and fitness space. I get every, credential under the sun, and I'm successful in the eyes of man in the gym. I'm making good money. I'm the head trainer. I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I'm back in the same place I was. I'm just not doing porn. And then this girl walks in, and I ask her out on a date, and she says no, which makes me fall in love with her because, it's like, it's my first time getting rejected.
You're like, this don't happen to Josh.
And I think before you go in your story, I think what's fascinating is your story's not a Disney movie.
Right.
It just doesn't have the perfect ending. It doesn't have this perfect, like, you got out of the industry and life wasn't, obviously you were breaking, praise the Lord, but life wasn't great. You were still seeking approval and validation.
Well, but it was at least a step of getting your name. Like, that's because it's just so crazy, man, as you're sharing that. One of the reasons why I get emotional listening to what you're saying is that I just wish people know how real their enemy is.
Yeah.
I wish people knew just how much the devil really hates us.
Yeah.
And
I would say, as the story keeps going, as much as people need to know that there's an enemy that wants to kill, steal, and destroy them, they need to know even more so that there's a God that loves them. And so for me, like Joey was saying, I lied until I got found out. And every time I met someone new, I was one Google search away from them knowing everything that I wanted to hide. And that was exhausting. And then, I meet this girl and she, I ask her on a date. She says no. And then she agrees to go on this run with me. And we go on this run. And I'm like, I'm stoked that she had agreed. And, I get there early. And before she gets there, I just start thinking. And it's like, man, I don't want to hurt this person. And it's almost like I hear my mom in my head. It's like, boy, don't you lie to that girl. Don't you lie to that girl. Don't you lie to that girl.
That's a good mom right there. That's a good mom.
Good country girl, right?
Yeah, like, boy. And I was like, hey, I've done a little bit of porn.
It's what he tells the woman. I've done a little bit of porn. A little bit.
And then she's like, what? And I'm like, man up. I'm like, tell her the whole truth. Because it's so easy to tell someone enough of the truth to get you off the hook. And
that's a word right there.
Yeah.
That'll preach.
And yeah, so it's easy to confess a little bit of sin too.
Yeah, come on.
But you're only as free as you're honest.
Come on. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, you're only as free as you're honest. And man, so it's like, hey, I felt like I just like blacked out. And I was like, you know what? Here's every bad thing I've ever done.
He shared everything.
When I was 5.
And this girl's just like,
yeah. And I mean, she's like, holy moly. And she's pretty taken back by what I said, obviously. And then once she gets her bearings, she kind of, she went from like being super flabbergasted to super serious. And she looked me in the eye and said, a person's not defined by the worst thing they've ever done. A person's not defined by the greatest thing they'll ever do either.
Wow.
God defines who a person is. Do you know him? And I was like, yeah, sure. Because I didn't know who I was, but I was very good at pretending to be whoever the person I was talking to.
You acted all your...
Yeah, I call it the first date mask. It's like, I don't know who I am. I'm just going to pretend to be the person I think you want me to be so that you'll like me, but I actually don't even know who I am. And, she kind of stopped me in my tracks. She's like, okay, well, what's your relationship with Jesus like? Where do you go to church? Where, are you plugged into community with somewhere? And I was like, girl, what are you talking about?
I only have 2 answers. I have 2 answers for that.
Tell me what you think,
baby. Do you speak in tongues? Have you received the Holy Spirit?
Yeah.
What language are you speaking?
Yeah.
What's your gift of the Holy Spirit? Yeah. My God. Who is this woman?
Yeah. And then, I was just like, I conceded. And I was just like, you know what? I was like, I guess I don't have what you're talking about. And she's like, well, I've been following Jesus since I was in 7th grade. My whole family's Christian, and I'm not perfect by any means, but Jesus is the foundation in which I live my life on. And then she was like, so do you like tacos? Do you, what? Tell me about yourself. I'm like, what?
So you're
like me by surprise too. You're like, I'm not. You're
like, wait a minute. So I told you everything, and you ain't judging me.
You're right.
Did she really say, "Do you like tacos"?
Yeah.
That was the first thing.
Yeah.
So does that come up still today? Like, baby, let's go get some tacos.
It's actually our favorite thing.
Of course it is.
So I was going to ask you, is this woman that you met?
Guys,
don't worry about it. Jump on, man.
This is why I wanted to do a 5-minute monologue. You guys are going to mess it up.
Here, let me just.
I did the same thing to him last night.
Let me talk, bro.
What is it? No, that's not it. There you go.
So, like I was saying,
I didn't say anything.
So, because what I'm going to share prior to that, I think is even more important. So she has this interaction with me, like, is this tangible expression of Colossians 4:6. Her speech was, gracious and seasoned with salt, and she knew how she ought to answer each person. And, I was telling Joy, I love the Robert Coleman Master Plan of Evangelism. People are not always looking for an explanation. They're looking for... I'm sorry, I messed it up. People are not always looking for an explanation. They're looking for a demonstration. And what she was demonstrating was grace, And so anyway, we have this interaction. We text all week. We go to church. I go to church with her, and I'm curious because I'm like, man, if she responded to me about that, gosh, like I need to know more. And we go to church, and the pastor is preaching on this passage out of 2 Samuel. He's talking about this dynamic between Jonathan and David, and historically when the previous king dies and a new king comes into reign, the previous king was wiped out. And instead, David was like, hey, is there anyone left? Mephibosheth. They go and find Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth was expecting death because of history, because he knew history, because it meant his head. And David instead sends a guard to bring him into his kingdom, restores his land.
Come on.
And then the pastor's like, you know what? Romans 3:23 says that we have all sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And Romans 6:23 says the wages of sin is death. So who is guilty? Everybody. Who is deserving of death? Everybody. But there's good news. Jesus came into the world, fully God, fully man, lived a perfect life. Yeah, bro. And he died on the cross for you and I. And on the third day, he rose, authenticating his identity. And I'm hearing this, and it's like, I believe this is true, but what I can't reconcile, if my own father didn't want me, why would God in flesh die for me? And then he goes, Hebrews 12, talking about it was with joy set before him. He endured the cross. Yes, he was obedient to the Father. But Jesus died for me because he loves me. He loves me. So I got overwhelmed with the Holy Spirit, fell on my face, and
that first snot,
felt like it was snot, tears, and then I tangibly felt the weight of not the shame of porn, not the life I've lived, the weight of the disbelief that I was worth anything, because if God, the King of Kings, was willing to die for me, then I felt like I was worth everything.
What would you say? What would you define that experience in one word of why? I mean, because you spent so many years not believing that.
Yeah.
But in one moment, it all changed. Is there a word or a phrase? Is it the love of God?
Yes.
Is that the word? Is
yeah.
that the phrase?
I mean, because in the same time, I felt the fear of the Lord, which is the beginning of wisdom, which is, it's this cleansing spirit. And then by understanding the reverence I had for God in that moment when I didn't have it, and then feeling the love of God that coincides with having the fear of God.
It goes together.
It goes together, and it brought me to a place that I could never get to on my own because I didn't know that place existed. So yeah, man, that love met me where I was, and when the love of God meets you, He's kind enough to not leave you as you are.
That's so powerful, Joshua. Can I ask you to expound on that? Because I feel like sometimes for people who are living in shame or away from God,
sure,
they make that fear of God and that love of God exclusive, like it couldn't show up at the same time. And so what I'm hearing you say is that when you went that first time, you understood how you had fallen short.
Yeah. And
yet you felt love.
Yeah. The way I would best describe it is, if you don't know the character of God, you'll misunderstand the tone of God. And when you see scripture like John 14:15, where you see, if you love me, you'll follow my commandments. I tell my son not to touch the stove, not because I don't want him to get burned. I love him, and I also don't want him to get burned. So if I love my father, I'm going to trust that what he has for me is good.
Yeah. Let me make a little plug if I can real quick.
Yeah. Do your thing, bro. Pop off, bro.
Last February.
I know you want to tell everybody you had an eagle.
Hold on, let me just.
I did have an eagle.
Oh no, my bad.
No, but on that conversation of fear of God, I don't want to derail the conversation, but I do, for your audience, want to plug a resource for them. Back in February, we were at a conference, and John and Lisa Bevere were preaching, and they wrote some incredible books. We're taking our staff through it in December. I'm going to do a series on this book, but John wrote a brand new book called The Awe of God. And really what he says is this. He says, the missing piece in Christianity right now is people don't reverently fear God. And if you don't fear God, you can't fully love God.
Yeah, and I love, so John Bevere is actually a mentor of mine, and when I read Killing Kryptonite, it took everything that I was conceptually thinking on a theological basis, and it made sense, and I was able to articulate what I knew to be true.
Yeah.
But yeah, so actually,
isn't it crazy? Isn't it crazy how God will reveal truth to you?
Yeah.
Like you weren't equipped to even say it.
Yeah.
But He'll tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And if I asked you, hey, tell me what you probably couldn't, and then eventually He equips you to be able to share. That's so crazy.
Yeah, I'll say, I just want to say to your point. So that book is incredible.
Yep. I want to share your resource, please.
So me and his oldest son Addison, we have this curriculum that exists. So John and Lisa have an app called Messenger X.
And it's free app.
Free app. It's incredible. It's in 137 different languages, which is amazing. But it's a really great discipleship resource. But Addison Bevere and myself, we did this curriculum called Triumph Over Temptation. And from a theological basis, it's like, hey, number one, here is the gospel, because that is where freedom starts. And then we just go, like conversationally, chronologically, hey, this is how I, was saved by Jesus, but transformed by the Bible.
Hey, can we do? We only have a couple more minutes.
Yeah.
And I don't want to take over, but I think this would be really cool.
Yeah.
Can we just rapid fire, like 10 questions at Joshua?
Yeah.
And not just quickly, just 10 questions.
Yeah.
So can we do that?
But also, that girl did become my wife, and her name is Hope.
Yes,
There it is. I was like, I'm so
Her
sorry.
name is Hope.
Here's what's so
Let's
funny.
go.
Here's what's so funny. He's never golfed before. He's not a golfer. So when he would putt today, he would hit he would hit a putt, and it would go like halfway. And I would say,
would go 10 yards past.
and so I would go, great putt, Hope. And finally he got it. He's like, oh, you're telling me because I'm being a girl. All right, can we do this real quick?
Yeah, you want to start it kind of,
here we go.
start us
Let's
off.
just quick rapid fire. Ready?
Yeah.
Is masturbation a sin?
Yes. Go.
Oh, that was really quick.
Okay. So it's a sin? Yes.
Yeah, I would say it's a sinful behavior, because if you look at Galatians 5:22 and 23, is it executing self-control? No. Romans 12:1, if my body's a living sacrifice, is that exhibiting behavior that edifies the body, or does it bring glory to God? No.
It's a gray area.
Yeah, it's a gray area, but it's like, Romans 7 has much to say. There's things that I ought not do that I feel like I need to do. And I would just say, man, if it's going to lead me into further temptation, do I want to dabble in that area? No.
Here's another one. Does pornography mess up your libido? Do you have a hard time with an erection as you get older in life because of looking at a fantasy screen?
Yeah, I think so if you develop a relationship with a product, and that product is not real, you're insatiable for something that doesn't exist. So that appetite can only be fulfilled if it's in line with that thing that you have an appetite for, but the thing that you have an appetite for is not real. So while you'll find yourself trying to reenact the fantasy, but that fantasy doesn't exist, so you can never be satisfied. So yes, in many cases, there's people that are married or have partners, or they're desiring to recreate this thing, but it's not real.
So a parent who's watching this podcast, what barriers would you put in place to help them navigate these conversations with their kids? Just give them maybe one or two tools.
Yeah, I would say very quickly, if you feel like you don't want to have the conversation with your kids, that's not about them, that's about you. So you've got to take ownership as a parent and have that conversation, because the reality is, are they going to see pornography? 99.9% yes, they're probably going to see it. So I would rather not have to give an apologetic for, hey, you saw this first, but what I'm going to say to you is contradictory of what I'm going to say. And if it's a young kid, there's a really great resource. It's Defend Young Minds. And there's a book called Good Book, Bad Pictures. And ultimately, the narrative of the book is, if you see something that is bad, that doesn't make you bad. And there's good things.
That's so good. Can I ask you about that?
Sure.
So quick question. So one thing as a dad of a young kid, the question I ask myself is, when do I address it?
I was going to ask the same question.
Do I address it before they see it? Because I'm not going to know when they do.
Hey, I would say, hey, if you knew that there was something outside those doors that was going to harm me, wouldn't you want me to know?
Well,
yeah.
Well,
so
the average person is exposed to pornography
8 years old.
8 years old.
That's crazy, bro.
So think about that. So you need to start having those conversations at 7.
Is I ask myself, if I bring something up that he hasn't seen yet,
Who
is
would you
that
want
going to
to
push him to see it? Does that make sense?
Who would you want?
Does that make sense?
Who would you want Luca to see? Who would you want Luca to have that conversation with?
No, me, always. Yes,
So it's
100%.
I think it's always good to have the conversation prior to the conversation.
So what age would you say is good?
I mean, I would say kindergarten.
Kindergarten.
But you have an age-appropriate conversation. It's like you're not talking, like, you're not having this conversation about...
But some parents don't know that, right?
Right.
Like it's
like, hey, you need to know that, hey, there's some things that exist on the internet and on TV that are not, that aren't good for you to see.
Yeah.
And also I would just say, gosh, like, talk about sex. Like, sex is a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
Come on, put the passion in the place.
Yeah, but it's like,
come on.
Yeah, I mean, it's because I mean, I would say even within the confines of a church, if we don't talk about sex, the natural assumption that it's a bad thing. So if we don't talk about that in a place, and if that place is supposed to be the safest place we could ever be, where we need to know all that we need to know, if I don't talk about it, the natural assumption it's bad. So when I see it, I'm going to hide it. That started in the garden.
Yep.
You know, I saw something or I did something I shouldn't have done, so I'm going to hide from my dad. I don't need to hide from my dad. I need to run to my dad.
Come on. So I have one last question. Because I think we're pretty much up on time, and this may be just straight shot. If someone was listening to this podcast right now, and they are struggling with porn, so I have a two-part, and they're struggling with pornography right now. Yeah. How could you encourage them through the gospel or through the steps of take this?
Yeah, I would say if you're watching this or maybe you're having this conversation in a small group, Romans 8:1. If you're having this conversation, you know the person of Jesus. Romans 8:1 says that therefore there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Guilt and shame keep you stuck where you are. And if you're having this conversation, or you're in a small group setting and you're having this conversation, I'm proud of you.
We have to normalize the conversation, Joey. I think that's we don't normalize that it's okay. Yeah. Make it normal, but we have to normalize that there are 82%. Is that what you said last night?
Well, I mean, the
82% of men.
Yeah, the pornography industry is $100 billion industry fueled by viewership.
It's consumers.
It's watched more than the NBA, Major League Baseball, and the NFL all combined. Wow. If you take the people that go onto Twitter, Hulu, and Amazon on a daily basis, you have to triple that to see how many people are watching porn. 33% of all the data transferred on the internet on a daily basis. 33% of the data transferred on the internet on a daily basis is porn. 3 of the top 10 websites that get traffic on the internet, all porn sites. So I say all that to say, if the person that's struggling with it, you're not alone. There is freedom that's available to you, but you don't have to stay stuck where you are. But it's going to cost you something. Number one, it's going to cost you honesty, because if you don't truly believe it's detrimental to you and those around you, you'll continue to justify it. So I need to know it's not good for me. Number two, I need to tell someone, because what stays in the dark will grow. What has come into the light, you're now set free. But I need to tell someone. The probability of another man or another woman that had that conversation in a same-sex setting, that person has either gone through it or they know someone that has. So don't feel like it's not a conversation that you need to have. And then you need to take some practical steps in your life. Hey, if Instagram causes you to watch porn, get rid of Instagram. Come on. Break it. Come on. You need to take practical steps. Don't take your phone into your bedroom or your bathroom ever. You buy an alarm clock. Go to Walmart and go get one for $9.
And your book is coming out.
Yeah, I have a book coming out March 5th. 7 Lies That'll Ruin Your Life. Your heart desires the false promises of this world, but there's truth to be found in the person of Jesus. Yeah.
So I have one last one for you, Joshua. So I know that I asked you before we started this podcast. You said most of the time you're speaking and doing a lot of things like this, but that 20% of what you do is work against that 33%. You're trying to reduce that. You're working with organizations and you're working with legislation to remove that access that young people have for pornography. So how can we join you? Just finish us out here, if you would. Tell the audience, tell us, how can we join you in that fight? And you're talking to parents here probably, and just people that are free.
Yeah, so there's a ton of information on NCOSE's website. So NCOSE is the National Coalition Opposing Sexual Exploitation. And I partnered with them, and last year we advocated for this legislation called the Earn It Act. And it is, if you are you got to be 18 or older to access any website that's sexually explicit, and you have to provide government ID. So 5 states over the last year have implemented that legislation, and I'm speaking again at the White House this upcoming week, and we're celebrating all that's happened over the past year. And we're sitting down with 25 different state representatives and saying, hey, same approach towards big tobacco. Here's empirical data. Here's personal testimony. Now that you know this truth, what are you going to do about it? Because this is not my opinion. This is not my preference. This is what's true. Yep. So now you have a responsibility now that you have this understanding.
Love awesome, it. Oh, we love it so much, man. I wish we had like 14 more hours with you. I really do. But hey, Prolific Podcast, thank you so much for joining us for the past, roughly an hour. Josh, Pastor Joey, thank you.
Thank you for being here, guys.
Thank you.
Let's go.
All right, have a blessed day, guys. We'll see you next time.